As we all know, retail theft rings are an ongoing problem for bodegas, grocery stores, mom and pop businesses in both common and luxury retail chains. But they're also a problem for customers too, who really can't even shop freely without having...
And things are so bad, New York now has perpetual ghost towns even in the center of the city, where in spite of massive foot traffic, businesses still find it impossible to operate. And even though stores have been leaving places like this for years, experts say it's getting worse for some reason.
The thieves each had big plastic bags and stuffed them with merchandise worth tens of thousands of dollars.
If you've been out shopping in the city lately, you might have noticed a growing trend: empty stores.
Yeah. Every day, people go inside, grab stuff, and just leave. They don't even pay.
Take a look across the street where the glass is. That used to be Aldo Shoes. That's gone. Right next door used to be The Gap. That is gone. Right next door to that, Banana Republic. That is gone.
28% of retailers reported being forced to close a specific store location as a direct result of retail crime.
Elevated tactics bringing elevated levels of violence.
Retail incidents involving physical force have more than doubled.
8% of storefronts were vacant in 2019. Today, we're talking about 11.2%.
We don't know if there's a weapon. We don't know what's going to happen. And it's that fear right there that we don't feel like we have the tools to be able to safely take care of ourselves.
So, over 11% of storefronts in New York City are vacant. But what nobody's talking about is that massive retailers shutting their doors and leaving could mean parts of New York City stay like this for a long time, possibly forever. Because as businesses leave over high costs and high crime, others follow, turning once popular areas of town into deserted wastelands nobody wants to try and operate in. And after the businesses shut down and pull out, there's nothing here to protect, so the police stop coming by, creating an environment where your everyday working man walks down the street in fear of what could be lurking around every corner. And the sad truth about New York City's empty storefronts is it didn't have to be this way. But the real reason it is because nobody in charge is able to punish crime at any level. Shoplifting is a misdemeanor if you steal under $1,000 worth of stuff. People who assault the police are frequently released. And if a person on the street is robbed, the likelihood of stolen property ever getting recovered or the culprit being found is almost non-existent. And experts say that what you see right now, this is the result of policies that don't punish criminals, but rather protect them and embolden them. If there's no consequences for bad behavior, why stop? Which is why the retail carnage you're about to see could just be the beginning of the city's journey in a direction nobody wants it to go. So here we are, Upper East Side, 59th Street and Lexington Avenue, right by Bloomingdale's. There's a lot of foot traffic here. This should be a poppin' area, but it's not. And there are swaths of empty retail space here nobody's interested in. On top of that, the stores that pulled out of these flagship locations, these were major retailers, anchor stores, if you will. But now they're gone.
To give you an idea of just how many businesses have pulled out of this area, take a look over my shoulder here. This big space used to be the Container Store. That's now gone. Right next door used to be the Gap. That is gone. Right next door to that, Banana Republic. That is gone. And now the latest to pull out of this...
So, this video right here, this is from 2 years ago, and these places are still empty. And when these places pulled out, the city's defenders said, oh, this is nothing to worry about. They'll be replaced by better, more successful businesses. This normally happens. And the circumstances for the closure of these stores were blamed on things beyond anyone's control, but now the foot traffic has returned, all of the apartments around here are fully occupied, and these are still empty, which could indicate the city has other problems which are keeping stores from deciding to open in the first place. And when you realize that retail theft here is rampant, and many of these criminals are running online storefronts reselling that stolen merchandise, it makes a lot more sense why you wouldn't want to exist, especially when setting up a store here means it's just gonna be a warehouse for criminals who rob it and then resell that stuff on Facebook Marketplace, Amazon, eBay. Now the one store that remains here, the biggest anchor store of them all, Bloomingdale's, they're massive. They've got the types of security inside that store that you'd never see at an H&M or a Zara. The clothing and items in there, they're chained physically to the store with bike locks. They've got hundreds of employees running around who can unlock them for you. But come on, look at this H&M t-shirt right here. Ain't nobody locking this up. But you might be thinking, so what? Who cares if a bunch of stores shut down? I'll just go somewhere else. I'll just shop online. Well, that might be true, but the neighborhood here has taken a turn for the worst. It is now a dystopian desert. It's just people walking through on their way out. And from a retailer's perspective, this is what you call bad foot traffic. Nobody on the street right now actually wants to be here. Which is why here we are 2 years later and there's no recovery in sight. Which clues us into who the real victims of New York City's out-of-control crime epidemic really are.
It's definitely
hard for me to find places that I can shop at.
I used to shop at all of the stores, and now I have to travel uptown or downtown. Most of 59th Street and Lexington Avenue is now vacant, a desolate area for shopping. Most of the stores are gone.
Did you catch that? The real losers here, that's the local foot traffic that has to be here and has to pass through this neighborhood. And there's very little difference from the footage taken 2 years ago to what we see today. And we keep hearing about how greedy businesses are. Well, if that's true, why don't they rent these empty storefronts at rock bottom prices? And here's proof that it's not office traffic. Upstairs, you've got people in an active office, and downstairs, you still have empty stores. Which means there must be something else keeping these businesses shut down. And that's a problem, not only for the landlords who can't rent out their storefronts, not only for the people that walk through this neighborhood every day and are now navigating a wasteland. The problem is that now that these stores are gone, criminals have to find other stores somewhere else, spreading the crime virus around the city. After all, these retail pirates, they've got businesses to run, families to feed, rent to pay, and that's why it's no surprise that shoplifting now accounts for $4.4 billion of economic activity in this state. And as predicted, store closures in areas of town like this lead to store closures in other areas of town, which means there are more retail ghost towns than just this. So here we are over by Times Square in one of the city's most popular locations for tourists, and we've got more retail store closures, proving that it's not about an office market which no longer exists. The foot traffic's here, but the businesses are not. And what you're witnessing is the same story of a decaying urban environment progressive laws have allowed to grow. But even though crime here is particularly tough on businesses like this shut-down drugstore, there is one place here where it's impossible to steal from. And that place would be Times Square Church, because what's inside is completely free. But in spite of the surge in store closures, there are some experts who believe retail theft is not the problem here.
One problem, says crime researcher Jeff Asher, is that news and social media over-dramatize the issue.
These problems are getting more press, more discussion. I think some of that might be just a focus on a crime with poor data. If you have a viral video, you have a large-scale theft or a theft that turns into an incident, it gets hundreds.
Do you guys ever have people come in here and try to steal? Yeah. That sucks. It's such a small place, too. What makes them think they can get away with that? There's two of you in here, too.
I know, but I'm not worth it to even follow them.
Yeah, it's true. It's not worth it over a $6 prime. Dang, inflation. So, well-meaning people think that greedy businesses like this Rite Aid, which closed 2 years ago citing shoplifting, have an agenda that's not making money. And whatever it is, it can only be accomplished if businesses lie about their crime. And they say when you couple the lies of greedy businesses with sensational news reports about shoplifting, you'll wind up in a situation where people think there's a problem which doesn't actually exist. But then how do we explain New York State's $4.4 billion shoplifting economy? And how do we explain stores like this spending every cent they have on plastic, people to unlock the plastic so you can get your deodorant, all kinds of alarms, security cameras? Why would greedy businesses spend money fixing problems that don't exist? And how are these retail theft rings getting so much product that they can then sell online? Where did all that stuff come from if it's not stolen?
And it's happening everywhere. For months, we got exclusive access to the California Highway Patrol, watching up close how it fights organized retail crime, which, including external theft, totaled $40.5 billion in the U.S., according to
this CNBC investigation. This is fascinating. It covers the bust of a retail theft ring that was getting products from places like Ulta Beauty and drugstores. And they really go into detail, covering the operations that exist behind the theft you see in a store. In fact, these crime rings are operated by groups of thieves that have a hierarchy. You've got your lower level employees. They're the ones that do the actual stealing from the stores themselves. They bring that inventory back to someone who told them to go get it, who then pays them out for what they stole, and who then goes and sells those items in online marketplaces like Amazon. And the sad thing about operations like this is the people at the bottom tend to be exploited. Maybe they're experiencing homelessness. Maybe they're suffering from an addiction. Either way, the people at the top find folks that they deem vulnerable and expendable, and they have them in a high crime area like New York City to steal as much as they can. Even if these people get arrested, they're going to get released if it's under $1,000, which means they don't ever miss work, and the people running these operations don't care what happens to them. And the other problem is online shopping has exploded because the economy's so bad, and people are just looking for deals on products they were going to buy anyways. Which means you've got legitimate websites like Amazon with paying Prime customers who are buying this stuff up without knowing that everything they bought didn't come from a store, it came from a van that looks like this. business.
And Jeff Asher points to a report from the Council on Criminal Justice, which showed in most cities that kept good track of the data, retail theft is actually lower this year. So why the disconnect? Underreporting, perhaps.
Gotta love how they ask why the disconnect while showing a storefront that's never going to reopen because it was destroyed. Now, it might surprise you to know that there is a secret agenda here behind all these retail store closures. But before we get to what that is, it's important to understand that many criminal sympathizers were upset when one particular retailer announced it was closing stores specifically because of crime. That retailer was Target. They closed a whole bunch of stores nationwide, including their Harlem, New York City location, giving retail theft as a reason for why they were shutting the stores. And people weren't happy about that because Target was supposed to be one of those businesses that was like the anti-Walmart. They weren't these greedy capitalists. They were helping the little guy. They supported causes that people thought were progressive with some of their merchandise. Many of Target's proponents are the same people thinking that crime is down. And there are statistics that show that. But statistics, unfortunately, are a two-way street. You can get statistics that show just about anything. And the internet's full of allegations of misreporting, underreporting. But the problem is that in order to report crime, you've got to get your statistics from somewhere. And you've got two main sources of federal crime statistics. First, you've got the Bureau of Justice Statistics, which is an FBI system that catalogs crime that has not only been reported to the police, but then also reported to the FBI. And you've also got something called the National Crime Victimization Survey, which asks Americans if they've been a victim of crime within the last year. And there are allegations that different crimes getting reported to different places may show different results, which apparently it does. Which is why you've got some people saying crime is up, while you've got other people saying crime is down. So how do we know which one of those is true?
Detailed data on how much inventory they've lost. While shrink includes theft by customers and employees, it also includes supply that may have been lost in transit or left in a warehouse somewhere. And yes, data from the net.
So here we have the idea that shoplifting isn't the problem stores say it is. And people looking at the data say crime losses are not from organized retail theft. In fact, the losses we're hearing about aren't due to crime at all. Instead, the retailers themselves are stupid. That's right, these greedy businesses who want to make as much money as possible, they're so dumb, they're losing their inventory left and right, and they're not blaming it on themselves. They're blaming it on criminals who don't really exist. And all of this in-store security is just a distraction from the real problem, which is mismanagement. No, the real issue is that these stores are so poorly run, they've got warehouses full of inventory all over the country. But to understand how utterly ridiculous this whole idea is, we're expected to believe that the same stores that are so greedy they want to make every cent they possibly can are too dumb to find the products to sell to make that money. But how in the world can both of those things be true at the same time? How can we have the greediest businesses on earth who've also lost all their products? That doesn't make any sense. And this CVS in Midtown is pretty much half plexiglass. And why is this here if there's no crime to thwart because of it? All this security inconveniences customers, makes their shopping experience worse, forcing people to buy basic items online because they're just sick of the in-store experience. Why would stores roll out a massive security apparatus with guards and key unlockers running all over the place for problems that aren't actually there? They've got enough problems as it is operating in this city. In fact, all this added store security, it just raises prices at a time when people are already taking more of their business to the internet where prices are lower, not just because those stores don't have actual physical inventory, but again, because they may be stolen. But finally, retailers have complained loud enough that here in New York State, which has that $4 billion shoplifting economy, something will finally be done to protect people, which critics say won't actually solve the problem.
Retail theft has skyrocketed in New York City. The governor's office says between 2017 and 2023, shoplifting rose by more than 50%. She launched the Retail Theft Joint Operation Plan today, a police and prosecutor task force to combat retail theft.
So this new business, it's going to give some tax breaks to businesses who set up extra security, and it's also going to increase penalties on shoplifters who become violent. Peaceful shoplifters, on the other hand, they'll be able to continue doing what they're doing. But why is the state of New York going to give money to businesses for a security problem that's not real? Let me ask you that. New York State is money hungry and it's bankrupt. Why on earth are they giving that money away? And this is just more evidence that you don't have to be a genius to put together to see that something here is seriously wrong. And this is the case all across the country. You've got retail employees protesting unsafe conditions. And again, if those people aren't actually unsafe, why would they stage a protest and miss out on their hourly wages? Why would they lose a shift because they're protesting their employer? Why would they do that? And the idea that hourly employees are missing shifts during a tough economy just doesn't add up. But But the real problem for New York is that the laws here effectively encourage retail crime, because if you steal under $1,000 worth of stuff, the likelihood of any real punishment coming your way is almost nothing, and most people who get caught shoplifting have their charges dropped. Because we live in a society where the people who get caught stealing, victimizing businesses, they're not criminals, they're victims themselves of an unfair society that's wronged them in some manner that gives them the right to steal. And we shouldn't care, we shouldn't want to do anything about it. Meanwhile, every time we buy anything at a grocery store or a bodega or clothing, it costs more money now because all of the security gets rolled into the cost of the things that are still left on the shelf. And these new laws that are supposed to protect retail workers from those who become violent, what meaningful change are we expecting that to have on the retail landscape in this city? Don't buy those. Those are fake AirPods and fake Apple products in packaging that looks legit to deceive you. But the problem here is that if someone gets physical with a retail employee, can that retail employee be a security guard? Is this going to cause people to be paid to put their lives at risk when a lot of these shoplifters are emboldened and maybe armed? The benefit to this would be that if a store's security guard decides to block an entrance, stopping someone from escaping with all the store's merchandise, if the criminal makes physical contact with that person, it becomes a crime of a higher degree and actually lands that person in jail because they are no longer peaceful. I don't think anybody knows the answer to that, but we do know that in New York there are plenty of laws that people keep breaking and are never punished for. And critics say many of these store closures never would have happened if you didn't have a progressive judiciary that sees everyone who prosecutors bring charges against as somebody who's not done anything wrong, or as somebody who deserves a break because they've learned their lesson. But at some point, things in this city have to break, because everyday people are already struggling to afford the rent for their apartment. They're already struggling to afford the cost of transportation, groceries, you name it. And the longer New York City goes on protecting criminals at the expense of the innocent, the longer we're gonna have stores like this right here shutting down. Is that accurate? What do you think New York can do about its crime problem? Is there any way to fix it? Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.